welcome to the Personal End of Year Show. This is where we switch, and I have our guest from episode 56, the wonderful Ashleigh King, who is a podcast producer, host and trainer, who I've asked if she could host and interview me this time. And you've gladly accepted and you're here today. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me, and what an opportunity. And now the tables turn and I get to have a lot of fun today.
I know, I have to say I'm always much more nervous when I'm sat in the interviewee's position. So yeah, Ash, over to you.
Well, thank you so much. So it's great to... I love asking questions, and I know myself, I get super nervous being on the other side. So I applaud your vulnerability and courage in letting the tables turn. So I want to start first of all with just saying congratulations on another year and making so many pieces of content. We're going to dive into all of those incredible topics you've covered, but you know yourself, because you do this day in, well, week in, week out. It takes a lot of work to put a podcast together and to share people's stories with the world. And it takes a lot of courage and time and teamwork. And yeah, I'm delighted that you've done another year with so many episodes. So well done. That's a big thing for us to get in there.
Oh, thank you. And you can tell you're a professional podcast host.
So I wanted to look back and think about any standout moments and emotional honesty that have really affected your heart. So let's start with your heart. What's been the most memorable episodes for you this year?
And I've had to obviously go through and make notes because it's easy to remember the most recent podcast episodes, but there's been so many wonderful ones throughout the year. Memorable. So for different reasons, and I'll just touch on them because I might come back to them from different answers, but episode 27, Matty Hines, it was just so raw, that episode. It was about losing his two babies. I think both at week 25, within a year of each other. Horrific. And it wasn't that long ago. And he wanted to come in and talk about it. So much respect for him. And he was able to articulate everything, and in the hope of helping other people going through it, which is so admirable. Another one that I loved was Laurie, who's the psychic lady. And just the fact that she just naturally speaks to the dead as she's going through her day. The fact that she walked through this building and told me that someone's mother, a dead mother, was reaching out to them saying, you have to go and speak to my son or daughter in this building. I can't remember if it was son or daughter. It just blew my mind. And I was just like, are people trying to speak to you now? She's like, yes. And I'm like, what are they saying? She's like, we don't have time for this. And so it just, yeah, incredible, because I'm so intrigued by that whole side of things. So there's just two, but honestly, it's not doing all the other podcast guests, credit. Every guest who comes on here, I'm so grateful for. It's not an easy thing to do, especially when you're so vulnerable and sharing your story or challenges that people have faced. So I'm always so grateful.
I love that. And I love those two examples you've given, because they're really different. And actually, I think it points to your content on your show. So you interview a lot of people from different walks of life, different backgrounds and perspectives, and that's really beautiful. And so I'm conscious of what you just said there about, for instance, chatting to the psychic as she's walking around the place. I mean, sometimes people will have different perspectives to you. And how do you find that? Because you could just interview people who align with you or your values, but how do you find it maybe when you interview someone who isn't the same as you, or doesn't exactly, it's not exactly your viewpoint or your political beliefs? How does that help you grow?
I enjoy that. And I think there's not enough of that in our lives. People just want to hear what they believe. And I respect people's opinions and voice, even if it's not what I believe. And actually, you can still learn from it. It either kind of educates you more about the other opinion, gives you more perspective, helps you understand why they've come to that conclusion. And it also helps you either strengthen what you do believe in as well. So I think you really need to listen to other people's different opinions in life to help you figure out your own. But I always like to come from a position of curiosity. I think nobody knows all the answers, and I'm always willing to be educated on different things. And I'm just curious, I don't have any particularly strong thoughts around many certain topics. I'm just curious as to what other people think, and perhaps whether that'll influence my thoughts.
Something that I didn't put in the briefing notes, but I'm curious about, actually, now we're on this topic, is I wonder if you ever feel a duty of care or a sense of, oh gosh, what if I say that on my platform? How will that be taken? So what I mean specifically here is I've noticed there's a lot of far right views, far left views. There's a lot of polarized views around a number of topics. And I listen to so many different types of podcasters on so many different points and perspectives. And I find sometimes I listen to a lot of stuff at the moment about the state of Britain and the UK today. And I'm so curious that I've never thought about it before, but actually as podcast hosts, who we have on our platforms or who we interview or the perspectives we share or the beliefs we share, sometimes we're still evolving and thinking those things through live on air. And we might have not properly thought through an idea before we say it out loud. And then sometimes that can come back to bite you when you don't realize that what you say, you actually have a platform where you may be giving a voice to people, maybe it could be problematic later, or you're still learning in that process. And I'm just wondering, have you ever thought about that? Because it's something I'm starting to wonder about. How vulnerable should we be online?
Totally. And yes, and it's something I worry about. One thing I do always try and do is declare that I don't know all the answers. This is my thought. These are my thoughts and opinions live in this moment. Obviously, I don't disclaim that every time because it would take away the show, but I try and fit it into things. You know, this is how I think and feel about this subject at this time, at this point in my knowledge. And obviously you learn things all the time, you change your opinions, and so does society. It changes its opinion on what is acceptable of the general public in the grand scheme of things. And suddenly, you know, I do worry because you could say something one time that's totally valid based on what we know now. And then, you do worry because things change. But at the end of the day, I speak from the heart. I only have good intentions and I know I'm a good person. If someone wants to take things the wrong way, they're going to anyway. So and I just always say I'm learning all the time as a human, as we all are.
We all are. We really are. And everything we see is through our own filters and beliefs and systems and values. So I love the idea that we're all on our own journey, but we can always change and always grow and always learn. It's beautiful. Okay. So you've always said you owe it to your own guests to be vulnerable. So people come on and they share their stories, and some of them are heartbreaking, you know, and then you are also vulnerable yourself. So has there been a moment this year where you felt especially emotionally cleansed, or just like your show has done something really powerful for you in processing thoughts or feelings about a particular episode?
I'd like to think that the guests do. I'd like them to feel that, I love that word, emotionally cleansed, and that they're helping people. I do get a lot of guests saying, thank you, that was like a therapy session for me. It's got a lot off my chest. And they do say things like things I've said on this podcast I've never even said out loud to anyone before. And that feels such a privilege that they're allowing me, or using my platform to do that and to help other people. And again, they're so brave. For me, I still am vulnerable in my answers back. If I'm ever asked a question, I do answer it honestly. Perhaps one of the most emotionally cleansing episodes, it hasn't actually been aired yet. And there's also debate about whether it will be aired, mainly because, and this is often the reason if an episode is held back, it's for legal reasons. If someone's suddenly gone into court about the issue, or perhaps they felt they've given away too much and they've asked it to be held back or paused. But it was a topic about co-parenting, and I did speak from the heart about, you know, the fact that it is quite challenging at times, based on my own experience. And, you know, maybe things happen for a reason and maybe it's not meant to be aired, but we'll see.
Sometimes just being in the chair and having that conversation, even though you don't air it, is helpful.
Yes.
And I think people don't realise, you know, it's easy to listen to a podcast or watch one and make assumptions or judgments about other people. But actually, there's something really special when you have two people in a room and it feels like a really intimate chat. And it is really personal. But then it goes out into the world and people put their own thoughts and perspectives onto it. And that's where it can be quite scary, and that vulnerability really kind of shows up, doesn't it?
You're so right. Yes, there is a beauty and magic in just sitting in this room talking. It is a form of therapy in itself.
Yeah.
And the fact that you know it's being recorded as well adds that other dimension to it that perhaps normal therapy of just chatting to another person without it being recorded doesn't add. It makes sure you do really filter and process your thoughts and emotions before entering the room. But then even when you do that, things escape out, which, I think perhaps need to.
Yeah, absolutely. At the same time, sometimes that can be a little scary for some people who maybe have never, as you said earlier, articulated those thoughts or perspectives of, so they might actually come to an awakening or an understanding when they're in the chair. So do you ever find that maybe people after the episodes, I know you've talked about a vulnerability hangover and things like this, do you ever find that maybe they then need to seek therapy or need some extra help or support?
Yes, well, one lady, again, because we do a pre-podcast chat just to make sure the questions that we ask, because they are quite sensitive and very personal, that I'm okay to ask them. And one lady after the pre-podcast chat realised that she needed therapy, and she started having it. So she'd been having it for probably about 4 weeks before, maybe a bit longer, before she actually did the podcast. And then, you hear people all the time saying, oh, actually, I've started therapy, or I've started journaling again. I've started kind of thinking about my feelings a lot more. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I'm really delighted to hear that there is some support for people, or, that I think a lot of people don't realize that there is that whole supportive pre-briefing that people go through with you, which is really professional as well. And it's important when people are coming and sharing such vulnerable stories.
Oh, thank you. We didn't start off doing it, and we learnt the hard way when, perhaps we'd ask questions and they weren't acceptable to that person. So then we started doing the interviews. So a lot of the process, it does change, and it's shaped by the individual and by kind of our feedback on what's happened in the past. But we just want to make it a good experience, as a brilliant experience for the guest where possible, because at the end of the day, we're so grateful for them sharing their story. Without them sharing their story, we don't have a podcast.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you. So any particular guests or topics that this year particularly that have really challenged you, or your perspectives, or just kind of felt, oh my gosh, what was I thinking, or what are they, have you had anything where you sort of think, oh my gosh, why did I do this topic?
Yes, I have. I think it does kind of go with the territory, doesn't it? Yeah. So, I mean, I have no regrets. I've enjoyed listening to all of our guests are always, they share openly and honestly. And, like I say, whether I believe in what they're saying or not, it's nice to hear their different opinions and perspectives on life. But yes, it was Ben Peachy in episode 69. They literally said, if I'm on your podcast, there may be hateful messages, and it's not about ratings for me. It's really important that different voices are heard and different perspectives are heard. So, it didn't matter whether it's controversial. And yes, there were hateful comments. And yes, we did lose a few followers, but I think it's more important that Ben had the voice heard. I think that's really important. Another controversial one for me was Selena's episode of 57, which was right at the start of the year, mainly because she was a school friend, but she fell out with a lot of my friends because her behaviour wasn't good towards the end of her school life. And we talked about that on the podcast, but some of my friends were like, oh, why are you inviting Selena on the show? Do you remember all those things she did at school? But she reached out to me and said, I really want to tell you about my childhood and explain some of the things that I did, which I thought was so brave of her to talk about, again, live on not live, but recorded on a podcast. And it didn't excuse any of her behaviours that she did, but it did help us understand it. And actually it was nice for some of my school friends to listen back and think, goodness, we didn't know all that was going on. And perhaps if it wasn't the 90s and if it was now, she'd have been able to talk about it, and we would have maybe helped her through it rather than her feeling alone and having to act the way that she did. So that was controversial on a personal level and the dynamics of my friendship groups. But then also it was a real laugh because I hadn't really chatted to Selena in so long and we really connected. So that was a lovely one as well.
I watched that episode and I was really moved by it, and just as a mom now myself, and I know you are too, but just thinking about the different experiences that people go through and our kids, the friends they have may go through, and how we're all so different, and much we truly have to be grateful for in so many ways. But I think friendship is a challenge when you're self-employed and a mum and busy.
Yes.
And I totally resonate with a lot of what you said there about friendship. So yeah, I loved that episode, but I'm really delighted that you gave her that chance. Thinking of Ben, Peachy, they are just fabulous. Absolutely love what they do in their platform. And yeah, I think it's so interesting as well that they already have their own large platform and following, but it's also interesting maybe the people that you would introduce them to that, you know, who might listen to your show, who might never hear that perspective. And I think that's really important. And as well in the business community, I think we do need to hear more queer voices.
Yeah.
So I really love that you did that episode, and I think it's wonderful.
Personal isn't just about business. It's about the human stories behind them. We address all aspects of health, from cancer, gastric bands and meningitis to mental health and the menopause. Nothing is off limits on this show. But as these stories often highlight, you can't take your health for granted. I know I don't, and that's why I trust WPA to protect my health. WPA isn't like any other health insurer. It's not for profit and offers award-winning, tailored health insurance solutions to individuals, families, and businesses of all sizes. Among UK health insurers, it consistently tops consumer surveys and Trustpilot ratings, while its members can manage their membership from pre-authorising claims to accessing remote GP services, all on the WPA Health app. Crucially, they help ensure the access to the very best treatment at a time and place that is convenient to you. I speak with Martin Nichols, one of the 90-plus dedicated WPA healthcare partners across Britain, who provides advice and ongoing support during your journey with WPA. Contact Martin anytime on 07870 513 653 to discuss your requirements. Martin Nichols, appointed representative of WPA Healthcare Practice plc, authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. The healthcare practice is a wholly owned subsidiary of Western Provident Association Limited, WPA.
So what was the most difficult conversation you've had this year?
So Matty, who I've already mentioned, was a very difficult one. Just for it to happen twice. I mean, it's horrific to happen once, to lose a child at 25 weeks, and then for it to happen twice and it to be so raw, that was certainly difficult. But Kat Neal, she was episode 64. She again, that was very recent. It was within a year, I think, that she'd been hit by a car, a hit and run. They drove off. They managed to catch him. But again, we had to be quite careful what we said on that episode because it was going through legal proceedings. But her attitude and her mindset, there was no bitterness. It was all, gratitude almost that had happened and the things that she'd learned from it. I just thought that was remarkable. But it was very difficult to hear her experiences, her sharing what she'd been through, because she nearly lost her leg going through it. And it was really traumatic for her.
And was that intentional?
No. I don't know. I think they were drunk. I think it was an accident.
Wow. Gosh. And to be so grateful. This is the thing, how you react to life's challenges does have a big bearing on your life and how things unfold for you. Definitely.
Absolutely. I know.
I can only hope that if I were in a situation like that, I'd have that kind of attitude.
I know. I don't think I could though. I did say that to her and I was just blown away by how positive she was. But I suppose, you have to do what you have to do to deal with the situation. There's no right or wrong in these situations. Again, I could have been interviewing someone who was literally very miserable and depressed about it, and that would have all been valid as well.
So who or what inspired you most this season? Because one of my favourite episodes you did with a young gent called Michael, who is bipolar but is using poetry and art and things like that to express or to overcome some of the challenges he's been going through.
Oh yeah, Michael is remarkable. And again, I loved having him on the show because as humans, we like to make judgments and we see people and the way they are, and you like to make a judgment about that. And, you obviously you rein yourself in, you consciously think, you're trying to raise the biases you have in your mind, but your subconscious just jumps to those conclusions. He's incredibly talented at so many different things as well, music, and just, again, the judgments the world put on him. And I think he says in the podcast that if it was 10 years ago, he would just be in a straitjacket in a padded cell. And that's just heartbreaking because he's got so much to offer the world and just because of a label that's put on someone. And I know it's the behaviour that goes behind it, but yeah, it just kind of goes to show that we need to be better at how we judge and accept people.
Absolutely. And it's also when something's fundamentally different chemically in your brain, that must be so challenging, where perhaps you might not even understand some of your behavior or even see it. But also, you know, I always think there's a dance between the creatives and madness, and madness is I use it as a term, but I know that is a problematic term for some people. But I mean, you know, art and just accessing another dimensional part of yourself, I think. And so, that as a creative who's had my own struggles with mental health, that episode really was very impactful for me, and I loved it so much.
Totally. You know, there's that word, troubled souls. It does produce some incredibly powerful art, I think, from it. And it's tormenting to go through it. But, you know, if you can almost use it to produce art, I don't know if that's coming across the right way, but yeah, just sometimes, again, people shouldn't be written off just because they're going through a hard time.
So that gives me a question then about your own motivations for the podcast, or, you know, you want to unlock stories. I say the same, you know, I one of my missions personally is to help people share their stories with the world and uplift voices and things like this. But why do you think you feel so passionate and connected to that mission?
That's a really good question, is why, I think. So obviously the mission of the podcast is to almost try to eradicate shame by sharing stories, because apparently it was Michaela that told me this: shame dies when stories are told in safe spaces, which I love. And why is that so important to me? I think because I was so shy growing up and not feeling like I could share my voice. Now that I can, and on a platform like this, and help others do that, it does feel really good to be helping people. And it goes back to that belief that everyone should have a voice, I think. And it then goes back to kind of one of the reasons just before I set up the podcast, when I was going through miscarriages and I felt like I couldn't tell anyone. So, you know, I was thinking, well, what excuse should I say as to why I can't be in this meeting? Do I have a cold? And I just thought, no, that's nonsense. Just tell the truth. I'm hoping that people can have more honest conversations in the workplace, because the more we know and understand people, the better relationships are formed. And for me, everything in life is based on relationships, and communication underpins relationships and open and honest conversations. So I think it's for the good of everything, you know, whether that's looking at business performance or your home life. It's, you know, if you can't share the whole truth and you're too worried to share things because of shame, that's not healthy, and it's only going to hinder relationships.
Secrets have power. The truth will set you free.
Amazing. Love that.
Yeah, it's true. Okay, so beautiful. Okay, so I would love to talk to you as a podcast fan and enthusiast and creator myself. I want to talk to you a little bit about process and how do you stay consistent? Because gosh, it's a lot of work. So I want to know, you know, this is episode 81, which is just incredible. I can't believe that. So what keeps you motivated to keep going? How do you just keep that? How do you maintain that gusto to get it out there?
Well, firstly, thank you. When you say 81 out loud, it does feel quite good, because you just get caught up in the day to day. I guess having that purpose about wanting to remove the shame from business conversations, improve relationships, that definitely drives me. But I also think consistency is really important, and it's something in short supply today. And I think just people are too soon to give up, or give up too soon. There is a compounding effect in life with everything, of that consistent daily, well, not even daily, this is like kind of monthly really, or bi-weekly, showing up, recording, and even if you have little to show for it. And I always use that gym analogy, and the same for PR as well. It's a slow burn. You don't often see effects straight away, and same in the gym, same with a lot of things in life actually. And you have to put in a lot of hard work to get that momentum going, to start that ball rolling. And it's often people don't see the results straight away and they give up. And I think it's just important to keep showing up, even if you're not seeing the results. If this is important passion and you're wanting to change something, even if it's just a little bit in the northeast as a starting point, you have to keep going with your message for it to be heard. There's so much noise out there at the moment. And also to gain a bit of credibility as well. So yeah, the process is tough, as you've talked about. There's a lot of work that goes into it before we even get to sit down in the studio, which is my favourite part, this bit. And then there's a lot of work after it that goes into promoting it, editing it, everything like that. That's not always seen. There's episodes that don't always get to see the light of day. But I think consistently booking in times to record it. And then another thing that's really helped as the podcast has gained popularity, more and more people reach out to me to ask if they can come on the show. Now that's a massive honour. I'm just like, oh my goodness, wow, it's brilliant. There's also pressure because you feel like, oh, well, I must keep doing the shows because there's people that need to share their story and you feel like you need to help them do that. There's also pressure because not everyone can come on the show as well. There's quite a few people that do apply. And everyone's story is valid. Everyone's voice is valid. But equally, there's only so many shows I can produce within the time that I've got. So that demand from that side, and then also the demand from the listeners when they're saying, oh my goodness, that episode really helped me. It helped resonate. No one's ever said that to me before, but I really understood. I really felt validated. That's so powerful as well. So there's the intrinsic pressure, to try and be my best and help share that message and help my internal mission. And there's also the extrinsic one as well, which I sometimes feel more than my own internal.
But it's also things like, for instance, every guest you have on your show is a cost center. So what I mean by that is I don't think a lot of people realize this when they go on a podcast or listen to a podcast. For that host, they are paying for studio time, paying for editing. And even if they're doing everything themselves as an independent indie podcaster, it's still the time and effort to research, to write show notes or transcripts or whatever all of the steps are. There's so many steps. So actually to be able to go on someone's show as a guest, it is a real honor, just as it is an honor that you feel, to be able to interview someone and hear their story. And I share your feeling there about it is wonderful to get those messages when people reach out, but also every time you share someone's story, you have to think, well, if I share this one, I have to say no to this one over here because you only have so many resources, right? And you're also busy mum. You've got a lot of other responsibilities. You've got clients. So that's one of the things that I'm so impressed with, really. And I commend you and I take my hat off to you. It is really just about the consistency in terms of actually showing up and not just showing up, but showing up when it's tough. And so when you're going through life stuff or client stuff or, cost of living stuff, how do you do that? How do you keep showing up when it's tough?
And obviously last year, as I talked about, it was very tough. Hopefully that'll be the hardest year of my life. Please, life. And there was a stage. Luckily, I had one more month worth of podcasts because I tend to record them in a batch. So I'll record all of the month in one day.
Yeah.
It's usually a marathon day because it is really intense, recording. So I had that one. If maybe I didn't have that one booked in, maybe I just stopped for a bit. And then I think that's when you struggle to restart. So it was already booked in, managed to get through it. Lots of crying breaks in between. Because again, when you're going through a difficult time yourself, other people's difficult stories, you just feel everything. I feel a lot anyway, but everything I was feeling for them. Even if they just said they had a bad day, they dropped their cup of tea, I was like, oh my goodness, and then it was that question, right? Do I keep going or do I stop? And if anything, I think I used the analogy about it feels like your world's on fire when you're going through trauma. And it really does. It feels like everything around you is crumbling to the ground, burning down. But then I heard that, you can use the fire to keep warm and cook, or you can let it burn your house down. So, I used it as a motivation. And I just thought, no, this isn't going to stop me on this personal mission. It's not going to stop me in my business. It's not going to stop me in my life. It's going to slow me down for a little bit, but I'm going to book things in on purpose and I'm going to keep making them happen. And even if it means that I sit up through the night writing questions because I haven't had the emotional capacity during the day, it's going to happen. So, I'm a very tenacious person. If someone tells me I can't do something, I make sure it happens. I've got more motivation from that side than if someone's willing me on to do it in a weird way. That's the way my brain works.
I'm 100% the same. So it's great motivated. Get me to do stuff. You're not going to be able to fit that in. Just watch.
Yeah. So yeah. In a weird way, even though you're having a terrible time and you've got suddenly so much more to do, it gives me so much more motivation as well. And this year has been about rebuilding. If I use that fire analogy as well, literally everything was burnt to the ground. I'm rebuilding foundations. It sounds cheesy, but it's true. It's where I'm at. But I am also still keeping a little bit of that fire smouldering away. I don't think that'll go. And in a weird way, I don't want it to go. That's going to motivate me to be better than I've ever been.
It's almost an initiation for what's to come. So there may be some treasure around the corner that you're just not aware of yet. I love this saying, sometimes we think we're being buried, but actually we're being planted. It's just really, really connects with me. So I love that. But I really did want to know, for instance, when you have all this plate, do you ever have days where you just want to hide under the duvet, and how do you get up out of bed? And I guess part of that is having, two little wonderful people that help you do that.
Yeah, absolutely. They inspire me in every way. And again, that's a cheesy classic line from a parent, said every parent, but it's so true. And then equally, you don't have the chance to stop. You have two little people depending on you. And you have to just make it work. The same in business, as a business owner, you have responsibilities. It's similar to parental responsibilities, not as intense, but people depend on you. You need to make sure that you're keep steering the ship. And yes, it's been a little bit rocky, it hasn't, I've shown up every day. There's never been a day that I haven't shown up, whether it's for my kids, for my business, for friends as well, family. And it helps in a way to do that, but there's no option. You have to, as a business owner, as a mother, friends slightly different, but still, if someone's struggling, I want to be there for them. Mm-hmm.
That makes me think about Michelle Minikin's episode about the good girl deprogramming, because I think you and I are sometimes those good girls that just keep showing up and people pleasing. And that's hard, isn't it? Because sometimes it is just turning up and the masking. Yeah. But you do show up, and I applaud you for doing it. And you're fantastic. I don't think everyone listening or watching will know this, but there is something called pod fade, where a lot of people fizzle out. So they start their show, they're super excited, and they think everyone's going to listen. I've had people come to me who want to start a podcast next week, and they want it to have 1 million listeners by Christmas. And you think, hang on, let me just help you with this a second, and let me just manage your expectations. And they almost think you're putting them down, or you're trying to kill their buzz, or you don't want them to succeed. And it's not the case at all. But most people who try and podcast do burn out. And actually, if you get past 6 episodes, it really is something to be celebrated. So to get to 81, you're in the top 5%. So well done.
Wow.
And especially as a female podcaster, there are lots of reasons, sociological reasons, economic reasons, all kinds of reasons why women and their voices might not be heard as much. And so I applaud what you're doing. I think it's great. We all have our own perspectives, and it's really important that we're able to share ours with the world. So yeah, keep going. It's amazing work.
Oh, thank you. I actually hadn't heard of pod fade until we talked about it. And yeah, I think you have to be different to stand out in today's world. And if by being different, it's about consistency, because there's amazing podcasts out there, and I'm aware of that. And I know I'm perhaps not the best podcast host, not the best podcast content, but I'm very realistic when I think these things through. But I'm like, well, how can I be different? And then you look at it, well, what are other podcasts not doing? Consistently showing up. So then I'm just like, right, that's what I'm going to do. Obviously, try and create that good content. There's no point equally, if the podcast was getting 0 listens, terrible feedback, I wouldn't just continue for the sake of it. And if that suddenly changed, it would change my motivation for it as well. If it's not adding value to anyone's life, then there's no point in me being here.
That's true. However, I do think on that point, you've actually done a brilliant thing this year. So you don't just have one podcast you're consistently showing up with, you have 2. And I would say the second one, the PRsonal podcast, is that correct?
Pocket Size PR podcast.
Pocket Size PR, apologies. And I've appeared on both, and thank you so much. But actually in that first episode with me, you spoke about how there is going to be changing artificial intelligence, AI kind of things when it comes to PR. And you talked about the importance of podcasting and how it can actually help I think you mentioned that in that episode, or at least you've definitely. Yeah. And I've noticed that. So I notice now if I want to go and find out about a potential guest or a potential host or someone I might want to work with, I can now find really deep, interesting data about them based on long form content that they've been part of or participated in. And I think it was really smart to launch that second podcast because it actually helped as a business initiative. And it's also encouraged me to think about setting up a second one for myself, which I'm hoping to do in the new year. So watch this space. But I would love to ask you about that for a moment. You know, how has it been launching a second podcast, staying on top of it? But also to me, from the outside looking in, that one, because it's not necessarily about the personal stories and the people behind the business, it's more about short, snappy, you know, industry insights and tips. I feel that's a real thought leadership piece.
Yeah, it's totally different to this one. And also, speaking honestly, I don't get as much satisfaction out of the PR one. This one, it feels more closely aligned to my mission. The other one is more about educating. You know, PR, ironically, had lost its identity a little bit through the whole digital marketing thing. I feel like it's gaining it back with the LLMs and how they retrieve their data and information through credible sources. So that's a positive. And yeah, it's so interesting hearing other communications professionals' thoughts and opinions. It's definitely thought leadership. It's also definitely a business development tool for us. It creates amazing content that we can share, as does Personal. But also we can interview people who perhaps may be interested in PR services down the line, but equally are amazingly wise in what they do and can share knowledge with the listeners. I just want people to take PR seriously. It's sometimes being seen as the fluffy option, the sparkly option, just to add a bit of sprinkle at the end. And it's incredibly powerful, especially in today's world where trust and credibility are fading with all the fake news, AI. You don't even know what is real anymore.
This is a real concern. Just for anyone who's not familiar with that acronym, so LLM is large learning module. Is that right?
That's right.
And that's often used to train on
learned language, something like that.
Large language module.
Maybe learned language model, but I don't know, or large language model.
Okay, but it's what trains a lot of the AI content. Okay, and yeah, I mean, I think you're so right. There is a really interesting time ahead for PR. And I do think it lost its way a bit, but you're right. There is something about trust in a world where people wonder, are they living in a simulation? They don't know who to trust. And actually media literacy is more important than ever. And I think as well, there's people are being held accountable more than ever. So understanding things like how to tackle crisis comms, I mean, that's a really great thing to have someone in your pocket if you're ever in the hot seat when you need it.
Absolutely. And yeah, hopefully we just bring it light, a little conversation. It's called Pocket Size because it's hopefully quick and something you can just listen to, especially if it's on double speed and sometimes 10 minutes on a little drive somewhere or drive on the way to a meeting.
I think it's really great as well from a intellectual property thought leadership piece, as we were saying. Sometimes people can't work with you yet. They want to, but they just can't afford it yet. But it's a way that people can access you on their value ladder, and you know they can binge your content and see if they like you and work their way up to that trust. So it's a really smart business decision.
Oh, thank you. I'm enjoying it. You know, speaking totally honestly, it doesn't get as many people watching or listening as Personal does, and kind of Personal set my expectations. But it is quite niche as well. You know, if I look at our general Personal listeners, the Pocket Size PR podcast wouldn't apply to most of them. And we don't cross-pollinate really in terms of promotion. Harvey and Hugo promotes them both, but Personal has its own socials. So yeah, and I feel that perhaps we'll cover a certain amount of topics and then it might naturally reach its end until there's like more to talk about. But we'll see with that one.
I just think it's really encouraging for anyone wanting to launch any new initiatives. It's great. Okay, so I would love to talk about growth, change, what's next. So actually, we've already just talked about the Personal podcasts. You've been doing Personal podcasts for a long time now, and you've just launched the second podcast, Pocket Size PR. Have your motivations changed at all since the beginning? So you mentioned you've had a lot of learnings, but where do you see yourself now? Because one of the things I've seen you do over the last year is grow in terms of hosting and, you know, speaking and doing lots more kind of keynote engagement type things. Where do you see yourself? What's next?
So I do love that side, and I love podcast hosting, but I do love presenting as well. I do enjoy keynote speaking, but I much prefer putting other people in the spotlight and announcing people, just like with this podcast, sharing other people's stories, making other people feel special. I really enjoy that, almost facilitating that. So anything more, if anyone's listening who's putting on any events where they're looking for a presenter, I'd love to do more of that, definitely. With personal, I'd love to get to 100 episodes. That's kind of a goal for me. And maybe a live event. We did a live event for the 50th, so maybe a live event for the 100th, and maybe a special guest, I'm not sure. And then obviously both podcasts and even personal feeds into Harvey and Hugo, and that is my ultimate business baby, you know, and that's still very important to me. And that is one thing that people seem to think. People like to put people in boxes. And if you start almost podcasting, that means I'm not focused on my PR business anymore and I'm all about speaking and presenting. And yes, that's an exciting area for me that I'd like to develop, but it doesn't mean that I've totally forgotten or lost interest in, say, the podcasts or the original business. For me, they all fit within that business.
I suppose that is a really interesting challenge you've got now, is that as your profile grows, which it inevitably will for anyone with a podcast, you are not only protecting your brand, but you are also protecting other brands, and those clients may also feel that sort of concern. Well, what about me? You know, as your profile grows, I hadn't thought about that, but that is the challenge, and it's, you know, leading, but also being that figurehead and that keynote.
Yes.
Not necessarily keynote, but that key person of influence that might be out and about doing things. And so how do you manage your energy then when you're shifting through different priorities or different types of tasks? Because I find for myself, I really love to batch my energy. I know days like this can be exhausting. I've got a limit. I can do 6, but I know that 4 is my limit if I'm doing sensitive topics, you know. So how do you manage your energy?
Yeah, it's a really tough one, especially, I don't know, when you have children as well, you have to really focus about your energy. And sometimes, again, being a woman, depending where you're at on your hormonal cycle, your menstrual cycle, it does affect your energy levels. There was a time I was able to plan things around it, but I'm not anymore just because I'm busy. But, you know, you saw me having an energy drink before this, and it was like more an electrolyte energy drink, you know, things like that, rather than just keeping having coffees because then you crash. I try and have a larger meal before the podcasting starts because you don't get a chance in between. So I had my lunch today at 10 o'clock, but I didn't have any breakfast either though. So had my lunch. So I've kind of got the energy to last throughout the day. Ideally, I'd be more prepared with little snacks in between. I try and have a good night's sleep the night before, but yeah, you can't control that, can you? Especially with children. I know, bless you, you weren't able to last night.
No, I wasn't. Yeah, and I also think you also throw in other types of brains or things on your mind, and trying to sleep at night can be a whole thing in itself for a lot of people.
I know.
So yeah, all of those things are great tips. But you also did mention earlier, you batch your tasks, you know, you batch record 1 day a month. So you kind of, I feel like that. And I know we're going to talk about this later about appearance specifically, but it's like, I don't want to put all that effort into every day. I want to save it for a special time. So it's quite nice to batch things for that moment. Yeah.
No, it's important to batch, I think.
Exactly. So I'd love to talk some real talk about love, life, loss, rebuilding. How are you doing? You've been honest today and also in previous episodes throughout this year and last year about how really tough 2024 was for you and 2025 at times. What does 2026 look like for you? How are you feeling now?
Oh, goodness. I haven't even really thought about 2026 yet. You know, part of what 2024 learnt me was to live in the moment a lot more, try and be as present as you can. So I've really been working at that. And obviously 2025 has felt so much better than 2024, but, you know, I'm still not at my best. Co-parenting is hard. It still kills me not seeing my babies every day. And I know I'm not alone in that. It's so hard for so many co-parents. And I still see my children a lot considering other people's situations. And I think it's about counting your blessings. Again, this podcast is a wonderful reminder for me that how lucky I am. When you hear some people's stories and the battles they've had to go through, I'm incredibly blessed. I have 2 children for a start. And, I went through fertility battle to get them. And some people don't come out with that. So I am absolutely privileged that they're in my life, even if it is not every day. My family and friends are amazing. Sometimes I think I don't know what I've done to deserve, my family and friends. And yeah, there's still tough moments. I've bought a house now, so that feels like a massive step, and it's a massive step where, you think it'll fix everything almost, and friends and family think it will, and it's almost like, oh, you must be so excited, and you know what? No, quite honestly. No, and hopefully that'll come. Excitement isn't a word I'd use to describe it. I feel content and I feel peace, and I know it's the right place for me, and I know there'll be many happy years there, and I'm happy that my children are happy and they like it. But excitement, no, it's not. Again, I'm living my plan B right now, and I know there's many iterations of plan A and B. I would have gone to the Olympics if I was really living my true plan A from when I was a child. I'd be maybe an actress, a film star, So, but it's still, I never wanted to live on my own. I never wanted the burden of all the bills. I never wanted, I wanted to share that joyous experience and share the hard things about moving house. But I felt incredibly lonely throughout doing it, and that is with support. I have an amazing mother and father, and I hope they're not insulted when they listen back and hear that I felt lonely, but it's something that, I'm feeling, and no one can help with that. I think it is more about the sharing of the emotional journey of moving, because it's a big thing.
It is, and it's sometimes you can't even explain why you feel a certain way, and it just brings up all kinds of emotions. We've recently moved, and I feel the same. There's almost a sense of loss or grief, or we've been there 10 years where we were before, and I loved it, but we also were different people then, and we've evolved and changed, and it's something that you've spoken about before that's really, I felt really was very powerful, was how being in a different place, it wasn't like it's a choice that was taken from you. You had your forever home and your forever life in your mind.
Yeah.
And as you said there, it's your plan B that you're living. So I think it's okay to still be dancing through some emotions there as you're processing them.
And people, that word I will always struggle with now forever, when the people say, you always know that maybe there's no forever, but when people have said, oh, is it your forever home? And I'm just like, no, I will never have one of those again.
Yeah.
I will, because you realise that you're not in control of life. And I think that what you were describing, and definitely what I feel, is letting go of the past. And I struggle letting go of a pair of old socks with holes in, because I just feel emotionally attached even to things, not in a weird way where it gets to a different level, but just literally putting my socks in my bin. I literally think of all the footsteps I've walked in there, and maybe that's just weird, but literally I'm just, I might have worn those for an exam. Some of them are that old. It just, letting go. It's just very difficult. I really need to work on that.
It's a really powerful thing. Whenever I need to change my life or situation or circumstances, there's the new age belief about cleaning your house and kind of making energy for the new and clearing the old. And I think it is a really important way to cleanse and purify your space, but it is really interesting. I resonate and hear you. And I really feel that for people who've been through any kind of trauma or hardship, the reason we hang on to things is often really special and profound. So for instance, I only recently realized that I really find it hard to let certain things go, especially memories. And I realized only when I was moving house that I moved to the UK at 14 and we packed up our whole house and left so many things and brought some things. But I think as part of that, I've kept the same clothes for years and, 10, 20 years, and I love them, and I'll find vintage clothes that have memories, and I'm so sentimental about things, but it's probably because I had to leave some things behind. And I think that's okay. When you realize it, then you can go, oh, actually I don't need this thing, because I'm okay and I don't need it. But you have to sort of work through those decisions live.
Totally. And you do a lot of thinking when you're going through things like this. And I think losing my granddad when I was about 3 had a massive impact on my subconscious, because it was very sudden. I was at that age where you're just forming relationships and suddenly someone's gone. And I do think I have abandonment issues more like with houses and things like that and situations. And, you know, I feel emotional talking about it, so it clearly has some sort of grip on me. But one thing that I've kind of read and learned is just because you tighten your grip, it doesn't mean that it still goes away. You know, so you've almost just got to let things go and almost try and let things flow in and out of your life, because, you know, I hate saying it because some things are forever for some people, but you have no control over that. Yeah.
And there is also those things about letting things go, and then sometimes things come back to you. So it is it's a really, that's a whole podcast episode in itself. Okay, so I'd love to know then, you know, we've talked about some personal stuff there. How is the business going?
And also, I just want to add to that last point, I'm not sitting at home miserable. I maybe was in 2024. I am still happy. You know, it's just like addressing those almost, I don't know, stereotypes of you moved house, you must be excited. So just adding that, I don't want people thinking that I'm still feeling really sad. I'm in a good place overall. Business is much better too, which helps contribute to the good place. Last year was just awful for business. It was just such a hard year, as it was for many businesses. And, you know, we've weathered the storm. It's still ongoing. And I know so many businesses, particularly PR businesses, have gone under as well, as many businesses have. It's just brutal, the economy. It's just, you keep feeling like you're standing up in the sea, getting knocked over by a wave, then the next one's coming. But yeah, we're smaller than we were, and that's really helped. We have a really kind of family feel within the business. The team we have are incredibly talented. We're producing some amazing results for clients, and that feels really good. And things have picked up a little bit as well. And you know what? Some of that's down to me. If I'm in charge of business development for the company and I'm not feeling 100%, and like I said, I had no days off, but I couldn't focus more than a day ahead in the business. It was like, what have I got to do today? Let's do it. You lose your vision because your whole world's crumbled beneath your feet, and you just think, well, I just need to focus on right now. Whereas, you know, I've got more of a vision, you know, more drive, more passion to get out there. And, you know, I think that's helped. I think as a business owner, when you're in such a small team and something big like that happens to you, it does affect things. And it's also not, the business had declined a little bit before any of this had happened. So it's not because of it. And also the economy, the environment, but definitely impacted things.
Yeah, I mean, we've recently grown substantially and then shrunk through extenuating circumstances. We had some council roadworks outside of our studio for 4 months, and we need quiet to record, and that's what we do. That's our bread and butter. And we shrunk, and I would say I'm probably going through what you went through last year in your business. And it's important to say that I have looked to you and others as role models to think, well, how did they get through it and how have they weathered their storm? And this is where I think actually going smaller sometimes is better, because I think there's so much that we get encouraged through, you know, growth, mentoring and stuff in the region about, you know, grow, bigger's better, you know, next step, what's the next milestone? And, you know, it's great to have investment, it's great to have support, but also what's really great is to still be here in 5 years' time and to keep people's jobs and to stuff like this. And my perspective on growth has totally changed, but my internal growth has been incredible through that process.
Yeah, that's an interesting dichotomy, because literally when you're not growing as a business and you're reducing, you grow immensely as a person, don't you? It's horrific giving negative news to someone. And yeah, there's loads of businesses at the minute going through hard times. It's tough.
What do you think has specifically changed it for PR?
In terms of the whole PR industry, I think there's a few things. It's identity problem, you know, the digital marketing taking a lot of PR budgets over, which has been ongoing for, I don't know, the last 15 years. Obviously, AI has had an impact as well. It's helping people produce content, get it almost ready. It's also helping people, I think it's going to turn on itself and people are going to realize they actually do need proper PR as well, because there's so much content out there that's not good enough. So if they go to professionals who can make it a cut above, it's going to stand out. And also our relationships with the media, but also the AIs, the LLMs, they need PR content with trust and credibility, because unlike Google, which does still factor it in, they're going to rely on those sources, like media sources that are trusted more so. I know everything's changing, so that might not be the case when this is aired, even a week later. But yes, I do think that provides an opportunity. And just the keeping up with the times, not just the Times newspaper, but, literally, media's changed so much, how we consume media, the types, the forms of it. And luckily, we've adopted a multimedia process. But those that just relied on traditional media, obviously traditional media's declined, and that's had a big impact.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I think that's a great opportunity for us to plug the other podcasts, so the pocket-sized podcast, because if you go and take a listen, you'll learn lots about the latest trends and insights. But yeah, I really do think now more than ever, there's so much information out there and people don't know who to trust or where to go. And so having reputable sources, it is really important. And I agree that there will be a resurgence of traditional PR. It's really exciting.
And more podcasting, yes, please, for you as well as me.
Okay. So I'd love to talk to you about women and being visible online and reputation online. So you're part of a small but mighty club of female podcast hosts. What's it really like?
To be honest, I don't think about the fact that I'm a woman. I just tend to classify me as a podcaster when I'm podcasting. Obviously, I am a woman. I have a very female perspective on things. We talk about a lot of female issues, and I am a feminist. I'm a big fan of women. I like men too, but I like humans. But I didn't even realize that there weren't as many women doing it until you I think you shared a stat with me. And yeah, if I wasn't so busy, maybe I'd think about it more. But I suppose perhaps the way the podcasts are received is different. Maybe you feel different pressures as a woman because, there is that pressure to try and look good. It goes back to that lens that we all talk through. I clearly do talk to it with a very feminine perspective on life, I think.
I do think you have a feminine perspective, but I also think it's very balanced at times, when you ask tough questions that maybe some people might shy away from sometimes. So I think when it comes to stats around female podcasters, I actually did have some, and I don't know where they've gone, but it was, there's not as many in the charts. If you look at the US charts, the UK charts, you don't see as many female podcasters in the top numbers. Mm-hmm. And I think this is also because, top shows that are getting bought by Spotify or getting investment, where they might be getting 6-figure deals, they aren't always going to women and not just women, but other underrepresented, marginalized communities. And so it's really interesting to see how voices are being amplified, and there's different funds. The BBC Sounds have had some great programs where they've put people through accelerators or podcast kind of incubators to help podcasts grow. So I've worked and kind of watched a lot of incredible podcasts growth in that way. But I do think there are unique challenges for women. So what I always find interesting when I look at stats, and again, they change all the time because the listeners and viewers and things like this are different. So when I look at my analytics or just general analytics, you find that males tend to watch YouTube more.
Yes, I'd agree with that.
And so I sometimes get a bit of a fright when I look at my analytics and it's like mainly males between a particular age. And I'm thinking, is this like pervy old men? Like, what is this? Like, what is the motivation? Is it because they maybe see me as a granddaughter? Like, is it they sweet? What is the motivator? And then I realized, no, this is skewed because these are households. They're watching it on their TV. So it might be seen as a male because that's the account registration, but actually it could be someone watching at home. But what you find is that actually audio listeners tend to be female because they tend to be doing other things at the same time. They're cleaning their houses. They might be taking the dog for a walk or taking the baby for a walk or feeding the baby at 3 a.m. or whatever it might be. So it is interesting though, when you look at stats, it shows that from a listener perspective, women tend to listen and men seem tend to watch?
Yeah, I'd say that's the same for ours. And I'm not massively into the stats.
Yeah.
And I should be more so. And we do record them, the information that's available. But yeah, I found that as well. And from our social media followers, it does tend to be more men. And I do tend to get more comments from men. And I do tend to get sometimes more creepy comments from men. And maybe men don't have to face that. Maybe they do from men and women. I don't know. And, you know, I get some lovely messages as well, but it's mostly from men. The strangest, I was asked if someone could photograph my feet for a foot fetish website off the back of a podcast.
Wow.
I mean, I did think about it. Times were tough back then, but I declined. But you never know.
Hey, no shade on how people make money and then make their content, but that is fascinating. And this is the thing, you know, again, there are so many different ways you can make content online.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And wow. And I guess this is the thing about sticking to your values and knowing what you're here for and who you're here to serve and, you know, like maybe which sponsors you'd want to be affiliated with or what kind of content you want to do. But I'd love to talk to you then thinking about that. Like, do you ever feel any pressure around appearance or, you know, for instance, I have had comments about sometimes strong women that have come on my show and maybe, you know, wow, how who do they think they are to be so out there or this or that? And so Katie Laverick came on my show and she's from Mama Social and I know you've been on your show.
She's amazing.
And she is, and she was a client for a good while and I think so much of her, but she really is a force of nature and I'm so proud of her and what she's doing. I really believe in her mission. But it's like, why can't we clap for other women and some of the ways that she's been treated in boardrooms or experiences where she has been in the room and asked questions? I don't know why we do that to other women. So I'm just curious. Do you get any negative feedback or any experiences that you can reflect on?
Yeah, the odd bit of negative feedback. And yes, sometimes it is, thinking about it now, women hating on other women, so to speak, which I totally agree with you. It's absolutely unnecessary. We should be more supportive. Sometimes it is a little bit of misogyny, I think. I think there's a name for it. Is it female misogyny?
Misandry?
I don't know, maybe. Yeah. I don't know. Jealousy, I think, comes into it as well. Because you don't tend to see it as much for the male episodes in terms of that.
So I think this is where I see the challenges or differences in the stats and representation of female versus male voices is that men often just go and do it anyway. Whereas with women, there is this perception of, well, how do you afford that? How did you get that opportunity? Well, actually, you saved and paid for studio time or you made it happen, you know, and I know we've both done that. We've done swaps or sponsorship deals or, you know, we've found ways to create our content and just create these shows. But at the end of the day, you still have to pay bills relating to that show. And it's not that anyone's given you anything on a platter. You've actually gone and done that. So it takes a lot of courage actually to put yourself out there and have a show. So again, 81 episodes, it's incredible.
Same to you, Ashleigh. You've created a lot of episodes and you continue to create podcasts for other people as well. And you're right about the courage thing, because you are putting yourself out there for negative comments and you do get them. And you just got to move on. Life's full of negative comments.
One of my favorite sayings is, what Susie thinks of Sally says more of Susie than it does of Sally. And it's also this idea that what other people say about you is really none of your business. So that's what I often will have someone say to me, oh, so-and-so said this. And I'll go, oh, how interesting. That's really none of my business. And I'll say it with the sweetest smile on my face, but I really do mean it, you know, good for them, good for you, you know. I don't have time to think about it. And
oh, see, even if I don't have time, I'll make the time to think about it and I'll make the time through the night to worry about that small little comment. And I want to get better at that in 2026. But I love the first one about Susie and Sally. I couldn't repeat it because I'm all muddled up. But the second one about what other people think of me is none of my business. It actually is my business, because PR is all about what other people think of you. So I totally get where you're coming from and being facetious, but I can't say it because it literally is my business.
That's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that, and maybe I need to hire a PR specialist. But you're right. Actually, what people say, it is your bread and butter, and it brings people to you, or it brings people to your organization.
Yeah, or what people say about our clients is our business. We've got to make sure and more and more so in this AI world, digital world, we've got to protect reputations. I think we'll be doing more of the protecting rather than building and creating moving forward.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so on that note, I'd love to talk about appearances. So we've talked a little bit about negative feedback, all this kind of thing, but how do you feel, like, do you ever feel like you have to look a certain way to be, because well, this is the other thing about female podcasters. There's also less video podcasters who are women.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So we are both video podcasters, and I love video podcasting. Why would you not give people the opportunity to see you and view you in that way?
So many people watch on YouTube. I don't know if you find the same.
Well, if you look at stats, again, I'm a stat girl because I have to for my job, training podcasters. But the top place in the States is YouTube to access podcasts. Okay. So it's a really important place, and YouTube and China are some of the top places in the world that people are accessing podcasts. So the UK is way behind in terms of our consumption of podcasts.
Okay.
But YouTube, you really need to be on there if you have a podcast, if you want it to be viewed globally and open up doors for you globally. So yeah, why not be on YouTube? But even if you were on Vimeo or some other video site, when you add in the camera and, you look a certain way, or you start to think about what you look like, do you ever feel that pressure, as we're both getting older, around perimenopause age, does it ever weigh on your mind?
Oh yeah, always. I always feel the pressure, but not enough because I don't do much about it. I mean, I could even put on a bit more makeup. I occasionally, I've been trying to be really good at getting eyelash extensions, but that's only because it saves me the bother of putting on mascara. It's just easier. Oh, I don't know. It's weird because I do feel the pressure, like I say, but not enough to seek medical intervention at this stage. I don't have any judgment against anyone who does. Some people look absolutely fabulous. But then I think a lot of the pressure comes from men, but then women, but it's ultimately men. I don't know. I just don't want to fall into that yet. And also I think it's a slippery slope, and I'll just need more and more and more, and it's expensive, and I don't have that budget right now.
Oh, exactly. So if I think about like buying my daughter Christmas presents or Botox or something like that, I'd rather think of my family needs,
Absolutely.
or whether it's, I don't know, something I need in my business, like a subscription for the year versus something like that. I just will always choose those things. Again, no shade on anyone who has had any interventions. There's loads of things I'd love to invest in if I had the time. Things like red light therapy or saunas regularly or the gym regularly. There are time investments I'd love to make into myself. So now that I have a new house where I'm not living above neighbors, I can actually do stuff at home. I'm really excited to be able to do things like exercise videos at home, because that's something I've wanted to do for years, and I don't have to even leave the house. And so I think there's something about health and wellness, and you spoke about this earlier. So aging is a privilege, right? I love some of the like Pamela Anderson is an incredible role model.
I agree.
I have amazing people like Dita Von Teese. She's one of my biggest inspirations. But the pressure on her as a performer, in her 50s to look the way she does, I just don't know how people deal with it.
Yeah, and the health and wellness I do invest in actually, because again, especially having children a little bit older, I want to see as much of them as possible. So my health is critical. I class that as going to the gym. I do invest in a lot of supplements and wellness things. So yeah, it's more for me, beauty from the inside, which I think if you're looking after yourself and your body and in a good place mentally, I think that shines through. There's some days where I could wear all the makeup in the world, but because I'm not feeling great, I'm not feeling well, I haven't been looking after myself, it's going to not cover up anything. Whereas sometimes I could wear no makeup, very rarely these days, and I'll be glowing because I've been looking after myself. It might also be helped by the right time of the cycle. again, I can look totally different. I'm sure my face changes based on my hormonal cycle.
I never thought about this. Imagine if you only filmed when you were ovulating, you'd be gorgeous.
Do you know what? Again, when I said I was planning around it, it was trying to be around that because I looked a bit better naturally.
That's incredible. Gosh. I mean, I don't even know what's going on most days, day to day. So that's incredible.
But I don't anymore.
Okay. So I'd love to chat to you about influence and inspiring, who your inspiration is and how you give voices to others. So who's been your most, you've done so many different episodes this year, but can we just recap just for a moment? Like, what have you covered?
Okay, all the topics. Now, I do have to write these down because there's a lot that we cover. And it always makes me feel really proud that we have given these really tough topics some airtime. So, obviously, the first episode, I think, of the year was yours, which you touched on murder, which, again, is horrific. And you articulated everything, all your feelings around that so well, and grief that you've dealt with. Motherhood, domestic violence, single parenting, death, fatherhood, sobriety, divorce, addiction, losing parents, old school work cultures, identity, being transgender, menopause, ADHD, aging, autism, celiac disease, shamanic wisdom, canine wellness, suicide, loneliness, car accidents, critical injuries, hair, cancer, bipolar disorder, breaking your back, living with paralysis, the Iranian Revolution, football, career-ending injuries, rugby as well as football, as I've just mentioned, childhood mortality, bullying, male infertility, heart attacks, gastric bans, weight loss jabs, wrestling and bodybuilding, teen pregnancies, psychic powers, and being a Thunderbird.
Wow. My face during that was just like doing its own little thing because I couldn't stop gawping at just what a list of topics. That is really something. How on earth have you protected your energy around that? That is quite a list.
Oh, I'm not very good at protecting my energy. Or making time for myself. There are things I need to work on. I am aware of the fact that I struggle with boundaries, emotional boundaries as well. So at least that awareness is the first step. Until last year, I hadn't even been aware of it. It's hard to protect yourself and then emotionally get involved in a conversation and feel empathetic or empathy. It's just hard. Like you'd just be like a rock, wouldn't you? Sat here. That's not to say that I put on a performance of it. It just all comes naturally. And you just have to deal with it, unpack it. But I tend to always look at it from a gratitude perspective. You know, I'm grateful, although I've had a tough time recently. I'm lucky that I don't have to deal with some of the things that other poor people have to deal with in life. You know, some people are really dealt a tough card and they seem to handle it with humility and grace, the ones that come on my show, and that is just incredible. So,
and it's fascinating as well, like you say, how many people ask to come on.
Yeah, they ask.
So, and that's the thing, is about giving people a platform. Yeah, incredible. And yeah, gosh, I just think what an incredible volume of topics. So is there anyone you would love to interview that's just your dream guest?
Yes, at the minute, I'm listening to a lot of Lily Allen's album, West End Girl, which is quite relatable in certain areas. And I think her story, well, it is fascinating. I know she shared a lot of it already, but bless her, she's been through a lot. Also, I did make a note of something because I forget. Virginia Giuffre, who's unfortunately no longer with us. I read her book. Poor woman, the things that she's gone through in her life, poor child, all the abuse that she's suffered. But I read her book because I believe her voice needed to be heard and still does. And she's very sensitive around names in her book. I would love her to come on the show and just reveal everything because these people need naming and shaming. Gosh, yeah.
So brave to speak out about a lot of these things. It is interesting what has been buried in the media and what hasn't. Yeah. And I think we are at a very interesting time in Britain where people are being held to account, but not just in Britain, but across the world as well. And it's an interesting time legally to see so many big celebrities and entertainers being held to account for things. But it's just whether they will sustain that, accountability and media attention as well. So I definitely think you're right, more victims' voices need to be heard. And it's something interesting as well about the podcasts and actually being in a time where we share so much on social media, because I think so many different celebrities or stories, Britney Spears, for instance, Justin Bieber, all these people that we look up to and hero worship in some ways. It's so interesting watching how their journeys unfold, or how their fans get involved and advocate for them, and how things then change.
Yes. Absolutely.
Cases.
All the grooming as well that goes on behind the scenes, even with Justin Bieber, with the whole P. Diddy, whatever he's called.
Oh,
things.
gosh. And this is an interesting one as two podcast hosts, because I saw that and I was really interested. I am a true crime junkie, I suppose. I don't know if that's the correct word, not the kindest word, but I am a consumer of true crime podcasts and have enjoyed them. And actually, when I became a mom, I struggled. I started to struggle with some of the content, but I found myself getting very involved in a lot of the P. Diddy stuff. And I think what I found really interesting was, if you were just in it for ratings, a lot of people did just jump on that bandwagon and started interviewing, former bodyguards of P. Diddy, and you could have done the same.
Yeah.
And you didn't, and neither did I. But I think it's fair to say there are ways you can jump on top trends in the news and kind
absolutely.
of catapult your reach if you wanted to. And I think that's something worrying as well. I think a lot of fans or listeners or viewers do sometimes view podcasters like that as sellouts.
And it's a really interesting point. It goes across the board with all content, whether it's social media. Are you creating for likes and ratings, volume, or are you creating because it's true to your values and your purpose? And yes, the latter might not get as many likes, but you'll feel better in yourself. And yes, you might have few likes, particularly on social media or your podcast, but it'll be in line with what your brand is and your beliefs, which ultimately is going to attract the right type of customer or the right type of relationships that you want from your audience.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so my dream podcast guest, by the way, would be Steph McGovern. I absolutely love her. I think she does amazing things for our region, and I love just her take on things. I think she's a real leader, and I'm really inspired by her. So that's one day.
No, she's amazing.
Yeah. But I'm curious as well, in terms of interviewing, so we're both podcast hosts. Is there anyone you really inspired by as an interviewer?
Yeah, I thought about this, and I think it is Emily Maitlis. I haven't seen a lot of her work, to be honest, but what I do see, she's very impressive. I've listened to some podcasts that she's done as well, and one of her secrets, because you're always like, what's your secret? Is the research in advance that she really puts in the time, and it shows,
Yeah, it really does. So she's one of my people I look up to as an interviewer. I really like her. I think when you hear the volume of research and effort she put into grilling herself with facts and figures before she did the interview with Prince Andrew, before he was stripped of his titles, that was incredible to watch that episode, and how emotionally charged that must have been for her. That was a career defining moment.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think just that strength and resolve underneath it all. But also, for me, Louis Theroux. So I actually saw the two of them at the podcast show in London, talking about their different interview styles. Yeah. And Emily talked a lot about using seductive tactics.
Okay.
But in a way that, charm and disarm. And Louis Theroux did a similar one, which was very much sort of just being a little bit silly, but like a smart, tough, but just playing his education and intelligence down, and just being really curious, and how that gets you somewhere. So both of those, actually, I love their interview styles in different ways. And Stacey Dooley as well is another one that I just think is just so...
She's very warm, isn't she?
She is, and some of the topics she's covered with such empathy is just incredible. So great. Okay, well, that's, the biggest thing I wanted to ask you, which is huge for me, is how do you cope with the attention? So we still have like little shows. Yours is bigger than mine. You go...
I don't know.
You go... Like, I don't know if you ever experienced this, but I'm quite a shy person. So go to a networking event and there's people who want to talk to you, or they say, oh, are you that person? Or is it you? Or I know you. And they repeat something about you and your life back to you. Do you ever find that difficult? Because I find it so hard, and it puts me off a lot as a podcaster. And I'm just curious how you find attention like that.
Yeah, I do like it. I'll be totally honest. I love it when someone comes up to me and says that I listen to your podcast, and especially if it's followed by some good feedback that's actually meaningful. It's not about, there's a little bit of ego as part of that, but it's more about the fact that it's serving its purpose. That makes me feel so good. So yeah, it's not like I'm mobbed when I go out or anything. I'm a very like micro influencer in terms of like my reach and stuff like that. But I do just feel like I'm having a little bit of impact, and it's nice to hear it.
Well, thank you so much for having me as a guest host. I can't wait to see another season and like another bunch of episodes in 2026 and seeing who's going to do next year's one.
Oh, thank you so much, Ash. You can tell you're a professional podcaster. You've been amazing. Thank you.
Stories are at the heart of the Personal podcast, and we're so grateful for everyone who comes on and shares them. Stories are also at the heart of a strong PR campaign. And at Harvey and Hugo, we believe that everyone's story deserves a chance to be heard. That's why we're on a mission to give you a voice amplified through the power of story. Our stories are shared in the form of press releases, social media, content marketing, videography, photography, animation, graphic design, and podcasting. Our stories aren't just heard, they're shared, watched, clicked, but most importantly, they are felt. It's this stirring of emotions that cuts through the noise to light fires within people and activate them towards your purpose. So one question for you. Are you ready to share your story? Harvey and Hugo, your voice amplified.